Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar on Is the Cloud Right for You? I'd just like to thank everybody for waiting patiently for us to get started. It is 9:30, so we'll get going, even though we are missing a few people. I'm just going to say, if you are on the phone, I am trying to mute you, but if you could stop muting yourself, that would be great. And we're going to get started today talking about if the cloud is right for you and how to work out if that is the case. So today I am joined by Simon G, our Business Development Manager.
Good morning, everyone.
And I am the Digital Marketing Specialist here at ACUTEC, and I will be speaking to Simon about the different aspects of the cloud and how to ascertain if it is the right option for you and your organisation. We are also joined by Jess, who is part of the marketing team with me, who has helped put this event together today. And we're going to get started now. So, Simon, is the cloud right for you? I guess, what is it for you that's the first things you need to really look at to understand whether the cloud is the right thing for a business?
Yeah, I think kind of just to cover a little bit off of where we're going to go from today, I want to make sure that this is not a super technical discussion, and I think this is more aimed at, is the cloud right for the business and some of the steps that we should take. So I think what we're going to really go through here is, what are the right options for your business? I have a lot of discussions and they can be as broad as, I don't trust the cloud, I don't want to go to the cloud, or right to the other extreme of, I want everything in the cloud and get rid of my whole infrastructure. So I'd always kind of sit back and question that and say, right, why do you want to do it? What is the benefit to your business? So as your organisations, you are making those decisions as much as anything. We've talked about benefit there and if it's right for the business. We're going to go over kind of, is it best to go fully cloud or hybrid? I can kind of touch on that straight away, and I would typically state that if you've got an existing infrastructure, for example, you have to question, is it right to get rid of all of that and suddenly move everything to the cloud? Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that's right or wrong. What I will do is say, think about the potential pain if you just shift it all. So we're very much moving from a hybrid approach at this stage. There can be exceptions to that.
Yes, exactly.
And also, we want to talk about how we're going to get started with that.
Of course. Right, Simon, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through some aspects of what you need to consider. So, for example, one of the things we'll be looking at is connectivity. I think it's important to say here that this is not an exhaustive session. We're just doing 20-30 minutes, quick whistle-stop tour. And if you want to talk to us further about it, obviously there is a lot more to consider. Please do get in touch. So if we get started then on connectivity, how do you think businesses can deal with connectivity when it comes to the cloud? Because there's obviously different things to consider.
I think it's the first and foremost question, really. So the first thing always will be to analyse what connectivity you have currently. We've put some examples of are you on an ADSL line? Are you on fibre? Are you on a lease line? And then what options are available to you? I'm going to sit out there categorically and say, if you want to run applications on your server, on the cloud, then I would question, if you're on an ADSL line, whether that will work or not. It's very cut and dry from that point of view. Again, even down, so connectivity is super important. It's probably the first thing that needs to be considered to state whether cloud is going to be right for you. Doesn't mean obviously you can't change your connectivity. You may go on an ADSL line and you have the ability to move to a lease line, for example.
Exactly, and I think within that, I mean, we went to a business a couple of weeks ago. They were out in the sticks, and I think you were quite rightly said to them, we don't consider cloud at this point until your internet connectivity is better.
Yeah, they were in a position, they were on not just an ADSL, but an extremely slow ADSL as well. Fibre wasn't available to them. A lease line was, but there are, again, different ways of purchasing a lease line. It was going to be super, super expensive. And it was just straight away not right for the business in that particular case.
Of course. And then I think within that, the other aspect that we need to obviously look at is this business continuity, because there are benefits to that come with the cloud. So even though you have to consider your connectivity, business continuity wise, what can it offer?
Yeah, so again, to kind of go back to that, I'll say typical conversation. It's not quite as extreme as that, but where people will say either don't like and trust the cloud, or I want everything going onto the cloud. And I'm always going to say we need to ask the question of why, and that's obviously what we do, discussion based in terms of what are going to be the benefits. For me, one of the key benefits, so let's say connectivity is good for you, and that means that the cloud is a sensible offering. Let's have a look at some of the benefits, and business continuity is certainly one of those. Whether it be your email application, whether it be maybe a CRM application, we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on. I'm going to kind of think about downtime, and that's what I mean by business continuity. So what the cloud does offer is a more reliable, or typically more reliable service than what you might have on premise. Yeah. If there's any, and I know there are a couple of technical people involved here who will have looked after servers that are on premise, and if you take something like an Exchange server which hosts your emails, they're quite heavy in terms of resource on your server, and they can be quite resource heavy from a support perspective as well. The majority of us absolutely rely on something like email as an example. Yeah, having it on premise can be painful, and reliability is far better if the appropriate cloud product is in place. I will sit here and say that at ACUTEC we are very much Microsoft cloud driven, so there are different cloud offerings as well, if we need to talk about that offline as well. In terms of redundancy, ACUTEC invest heavily in terms of their IT infrastructure, and I'm sure many of you guys do. I'm pretty confident to say that Microsoft have got a whole load more money than we have, and they have invested massively in ensuring that redundancy. So if you think about, if you've got an application that's in the cloud, then what that will be set up is with redundancy essentially. So but basically you need to take the pain of the hardware out. You are not reliant on a piece of hardware to essentially run one of your business applications. Redundancy will be available if it's in the cloud. That's not always possible when you're in an on-premise solution. And ultimately what that's going to do is reduce downtime. And if there's any business owners on the call here, I'm sure they'll appreciate one of the things that they do not accept is people not being able to do their job in downtime.
I think overall, realistically, it just makes everything a lot more accessible and a lot more easier to gain access to in terms of that business continuity, not just when you're out and about as well, in terms of that always having access to things. If we move on, it's the financial aspect, because I know this is something you always find really important to talk about, because at the end of the day, everyone's going to turn around at the end of any conversation and go, well, how much does it cost, or what's the benefit financially for me? And I think you always breach that in a good way. So what would you say to that?
Again, I'm going to refer back to that first time. I want everything on the cloud, or I don't trust the cloud, or whatever it is. I'd always say why again. And let's look at it from a financial perspective. A lot of businesses, in how they want to financially run their business, that might make the decision of cloud. So again, let's say we've breached that gap and connectivity is good, for example. Cloud is very much focused on what we deem as an operational cost. If we kind of spin that on its head and look at having servers on premise, it might be that you buy, let's be fair, an expensive bit of metal and an expensive bit of tin, a server to run an application or applications, and you buy that, let's say in March 2018, you've got an investment in licensing for X amount of employees, and you also have to very much predict where your business is going to be in terms of expenditure for the next 3 to 5 years. So it might be, I'm not going to put a number on it today, but you've invested heavily from a capital perspective, and you are predicting where your business in terms of amount of users is going to be. Obviously, that's a capital expenditure model, and then the drive is to sweat that asset as much as possible. Some people will budget for change of servers and things like that. Some people won't. I guess what the cloud stealers do is a much more operational cost, where it might be a monthly or annual subscription cost. And that, from a budgeting point of view, for me, ticks a very, very large box. A lot of people speak to me and say they cannot budget their IT. And let's be honest, there's a lot of businesses that just don't like spending money on IT. So the easier that can be, that generally speaking, businesses like it. You know, I'll kind of almost throw it into the buying a car scenario. Again, people still do it. Some people will still go out and say, there you go, there's £20,000 cash for a car. But the majority of people these days will say, right, actually, I'll do a lease deal and I'll pay it on an ongoing, forever, monthly cost. And that's really the way that IT and cloud services are going.
I think within that, in terms of financial as well, is that flexibility. So to use an example of Office 365, Simon always talks about sweating assets and making sure that you get the most out of what you buy. And in terms of, say, you know, you bought an Office 2016 license, you're not going to sit there and go, oh, we should go to Office 365 perhaps at this point in time, because, you know, you've already paid for that. But say you've got another member of staff that's on 2003 as an example, you can do that mix and match aspect of it and put them on capital and expenditure. And
yeah, there's certain solutions. And you raise a good point. There are certain solutions, I mean, Office 365 being one of them, where you can do that mix and match. But I think it's also probably worth talking about, you know, again, let's go back to the question, is cloud right for you? If you just invested in the last 12 months on a server to run a specific application, I would question the decision of suddenly just moving that to the cloud, because it's the buzzword. It needs to be beneficial. And I'd still be saying you need to sweat that asset to a certain extent. The other thing perhaps I haven't really mentioned there again is scalability of it as well. I talked about buying that server and thinking, right, I'm going to have 100 people in my business in the next 3 years. When you are buying, generally speaking, cloud-based solutions, you build it and cost it for now, and depending on growth, or dare I say decline of business, then you can scale up or down appropriately when you need to, not in the just in case.
And I think the next thing for us to talk about, because it's something that everybody brings up when we talk about the cloud, is security. Because I think there's a lot of myths going around where it's like the cloud's not secure. I think some people, for some reason, think their data is hanging around in the air a little bit, you know, at one end. But there is that issue of security, and, you know, is the cloud secure?
This could be an incredibly long conversation, but I'm going to make it really, really short, if I'm honest with you. Again, I've mentioned, I'm talking about Microsoft Cloud in this particular case. We've actually had certain people in our organisation have had the pleasure to go to Microsoft Data Centre in Dublin. Fort Knox doesn't come into it, if I'm absolutely honest with you. It's massively secure. Put it this way, you may sit there in your organisation and say, right, well, we have great password policy. We may have our servers in a rack and they're locked. We might have a server room and that's locked. We have CCTV, we have shutters. Yeah, it's comparatively to what Microsoft have, it doesn't touch the side of that really. No. I think it is worth, I'm only going to use this term once today because it gets so heavily used at the moment with GDPR. Microsoft data centers are GDPR compliant. I believe that they're the only data center as it stands today that are completely GDPR compliant.
They are definitely saying that. I don't know the full scope of that, but Microsoft are saying at the moment, in comparison to AWS and Google, they are the only ones that are currently GDPR compliant.
We'll use the word allegedly.
Allegedly.
So I think to even access the Microsoft data centers, it is so controlled. You know, it's biometric access, so you can't just kind of scan in on a card that you could lend to somebody else. It's face or finger recognition to get in there. There is a multi-factor level of authentication to get into any of their solutions. There again, in the issue of if there was a compromise of data, there are redundant sites as well, so you do not lose your data, and that's very important. So I think for me, security, it is the most secure option. I cannot sit here and say it's 100% secure, but it is the most secure option. It's 99.9% secure, if you like.
I guess where the security issue gets brought up is with the mobility side of it, because that's one of the major benefits that comes with it, and it's kind of that crossover. How mobile do you go and how secure do you go to a certain extent? What would you say in terms of the mobility that cloud offers, because that is the benefit of cloud, isn't it?
Yeah,
ultimately?
I think for me, security is a tick box that it is secure as much as anything. It is a benefit in the sense that it is more secure than having it on premise. That is always going to be a debatable element. So, you know, I'll just put my opinion on that really. We talked about the benefits. Potentially it's financial. Potentially you've got connectivity and you're gaining that. But for me, things like business continuity, again, that's a real key benefit. And the other one for me is mobility. I'm going to kind of, I heard someone say a line the other day where it says, you know, work is something that you do, not where you go. And I think that is a real true and strong statement in today's world. You know, a lot of people will work, whether it's in a hotel, whether it's at home, whether it's at a friend's house. You know, we all use smart devices and they give us full ability of how to work. Having it as a cloud solution, so for example, if you have a CRM solution that is a cloud-based solution, you know, again, you still go to that security level, but really you've got the ability to work wherever you are. You know, we've had quite a lot of snow. It really highlights issues like that.
It does. To be fair, I was at home for 2 days when it was snowing the other week, and me and Simon, we were on Microsoft Teams, which is a collaboration tool within Office 365, and we were able to work on a proposal, and we were able to sit there and go. I had the proposal in front of me. I was making changes while he pitched in and said what he wanted to say, and we had a really productive session, which if we'd have been at work, actually might have took longer than it did online to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is the weather didn't beat us.
Yes.
And, you know, we were ahead of the game from that point of view. You know, I'm also going to kind of point specifically things like Skype for Business and Teams, as well as mobile working methods. On a regular basis, we work with a set of partners, and we have a video conference which covers about a 2-hour radius, at least from ourselves. And there's about 16 partners on there. We don't leave our office. There's occasions where people are at home, people are in the office, and we all join that and have a video conference because of tools such as Skype for Business. So you know that's one of the examples. You know, again, mobility. If I take Office 365, I've got a tablet, I've got it on there, I've got it on my mobile phone. You know, suddenly location and device is not restricting me, and that's a real strong benefit.
I have just seen a question. We will deal with questions at the end if you don't mind, Nathaniel. But if we just move on now in terms of mobility to what are the options, Simon? Because I think there's this whole thing of let's go to the cloud, but what do you actually do with the cloud? Where do you get started?
I think really, if you look at that slide and kind of work it a little bit logically, that this is not the absolute necessity route. I'm going to just state that. So this is a little bit of an order which is logical. So some people might take option 1 and 2 at the same time. But I've mentioned, you know, basically the focus is how we actually start moving to the cloud. Some of you may already be on that journey, so you know this might be kind of a tick box for you as much as anything. But emails is painful to have on premise. As users, you may not particularly see that. People who are looking after that, they will be seeing that. So for me, it's a very straightforward option to say, providing my connectivity is okay, and I really do mean okay and not good, If you're an ADSL, there'll be a sanity check on whether email in the cloud is right, but it's not impossible to have that. So it's not always about having brilliant connectivity. We've all used email in the cloud probably, whether it be a Hotmail account, a Gmail account, or whatever. So there shouldn't be a scare factor. We should be confident that's the approach. So it's a very easy solution to say, let's get that off on premise and move it into the cloud. So that would always be our kind of number one stepping stone. And then along with that are the other bells and whistles of Office 365. So again, that's more down to how you purchase it. You might find, and Amy touched on it earlier, that across the company you've got an older version of Microsoft Office. Well, rather than just buy another piece of media for your Microsoft Office, maybe looking at an Office 365 package, maybe something like Business Premium. Again, we can talk about the different options offline today. Would be a sensible solution. Yeah, we're very much the Office 365, something like Business Premium, gives your Office applications installed on the devices. The learning curve is very low in terms of your users, but you also get the benefits of tools such as OneDrive for Business, such as Skype for Business, such as Teams, and many more. So they're quite nice, easy solutions to kind of have that first stepping stone.
I think with Office 365, just to point it out, is that when we say you might have an older version of Office and then go to Office 365, is that with Office 365 you are always on the latest version of the application. Yeah. So in 10 years time, if you're still on Office 365, you will be on the latest version that they can offer.
Yeah, it's a really important point. Yeah, you're not worried about old versions against new versions. It's nice and straightforward. Backup in the cloud is also a very important one. Again, some people may choose to do this as the first step. Again, there are varying different options, but if I kind of keep it pretty simple at this stage, a few years ago, very much the traditional way of doing it would be that you would back up to an on-site device, your infrastructure, and then you would have external drives or tapes even, and then somebody would be responsible for taking those off-site. Yeah. External drives and tapes are not the most stable of items, in fairness. I'm not going to reel off loads of stories because I can see time is pushing on today. There's also takes human intervention to actually remember to take those off-site. It's also quite difficult to monitor the success of those as well to make sure that backup is working. So really moving it, we always say keep it on premise, but also have a cloud backup as well. And then in the event of something on premise, your data, your images is safe. Server in the cloud, well, it might be that actually by moving your emails from Exchange to Exchange Online, you've moved a server into the cloud. But that would be using a Microsoft piece of software essentially. On the other side of it, you may have an application that's sitting on a server think, actually, I don't want that to be in my building. I don't have to heat it, cool it, whatever, heat and cool. I don't want to, power it, cool it, etc. and have that factor that I've got to make sure that the drives are okay and the memory's okay and it's all operational. So can we provision that as a server in the cloud? And Microsoft is called Azure. Yeah. So again, we've got a number of clients where they are actually have servers physically in the cloud. And then the final part is to have the whole infrastructure in the cloud. It might be you've got 10 servers. Don't go and put all 10 at once. Because what happens if there's a problem? Your business is going to suffer immensely. So where we say, that should be a gradual process to move your whole infrastructure in the cloud. You might be an organisation where you've got one server, and therefore I might question what I've just said, and we could move everything in the cloud at once.
Okay, so what we're going to do now, I guess, is wrap up essentially before we take any questions. So Simon, do you want to just go over what we've discussed?
I know it's a short session, but I think it's just important to say, is it the right option for your business? Don't go by the buzzword. Yeah, cloud gives us lots of benefits. We mentioned mobility, security. I'm going to say potentially financial.
how to get started. We also talked about.
We talked about how to get started, and we talked about fully cloud or hybrid. Thank you, Amy. I went blank. So yeah, you know, as I've said, do it in that stepping stone approach. Have a goal if you want to move everything there, and say, right, well, in 2 years I want to get everything there. In 12 months, how do I get to that goal and move in piece by piece? Yeah, and just having that first step, you know, maybe back up, maybe email, something like that as a first step. But again, even when you look at the benefits, they've got to be beneficial to you and your business. You might say, mobility does not affect me. It's not a benefit to my business. That's fine. Don't let anybody else push you down that route. Make sure that's a benefit to your business. You may sit there and think, to be honest with you, if I don't get in my emails today, as an example, my business does not suffer. Fine. Therefore, business continuity may not be a massive benefit to your business. So again, don't be concerned. And you may not be concerned about security. I can talk security all day long, but unless you feel it's beneficial, then you've got to be happy with the decision, I think, is what I would say.
Definitely, definitely.
The one thing I am going to say.
Yep, go for it.
Do not think cloud is cheaper. That should not be the reason you go for cloud, because cloud is cheaper. There are times where it can be. And I'm going to kind of leave it at that, because that is not why the cloud is around, to make it cheaper.
No, of course not. So, thank you very much, Simon. We will get round to questions just in a second. I just want to say some things to take away is we have our cloud guide available to all webinar attendees. If you want to download it, it's at that URL. We are here to answer any questions today that you might have about the cloud, whether that's, you know, very simple questions or, you know, a little bit deeper. If we can answer them, we will. If not, we'll take you to a technical expert. You can, of course, contact us directly as well today if you would like to talk to us more about the cloud. So that's our phone number right there. Ask for anyone, but particularly me or Simon. We're happy to talk to you. And I guess really now it's that case of, you know, do we have any questions? I know that we have a question about Teams that's been forwarded to us. I just want to say that you can email me at the email address that's, so it's amy@acutec.co.uk if you are on the phone, or if not, you can ask us questions on the chat box. So I'm just going to type in here just so you can see. So if you type your questions in, we'll be able to answer them. And the first question we have had, Simon, is can Teams be used to access files on our server storage? Would you like to answer that, or shall I?
I think first of all with Teams, just to kind of let everybody know what Teams is, it's, my terminology might be poor here, but essentially it's an instant messaging tool where you can video, you can call. I'm gonna just mention at this stage, I've talked about Skype for Business.
I think it's more of a virtual workspace for Teams to a certain extent.
Skype for Business was also becoming into Teams, which makes it also more combined as a product, really. Can you access files on your server is a really good question. It will depend where you're located and where your files are stored. So if your server is an on-premise file server, if you are in the office or if you have access to that wherever you are, then in theory, yes, you should be able to, I think, is the answer to that. It does depend on what that configuration, what that setup is. The reason I kind of say that, it might be that you're using things like SharePoint or OneDrive.
Yes, you can access SharePoint through it. Then you can access those files. So it's a little bit of a grey answer. The possibilities are there, I think, is what I would say. Yes, and they're integrating lots of different things with Teams now. I think you can get like news applications integrated with it, so it'll tell you when the different aspects of the news. It's becoming a very sort of a tool for everything. So it integrates with your OneNote. You can have channels for different teams to talk about different things. It is becoming a really great collaboration tool that we're using more and more in the business. And then, Nathaniel, you've asked me a second question about Teams, which is, it was more towards remote working in terms of Teams outside.
I'm not quite, depending exactly what is meant by that, to be honest with you, Nathaniel. So for us here, we're using Teams for calls, and video conferencing. We're also using it as instant messaging. We do share files. In terms of remote working, then it depends what you want access to
and what you want to do with them as well, because accessing it's not necessarily an access tool to access your files necessarily. That's more of a SharePoint kind of aspect. So hopefully that answers your question. I can see you're typing again. If anyone does have any questions, it did answer your question, perfect. If anyone does have any further questions, we are here. We're going to mute ourselves just while we wait for any questions. Please type in the chat box or send me an email and we'll be happy to answer them.
We are also aware that, you know, people have got busy lives. I know we're extremely grateful that you've taken the time out today, so I know we're kind of on our half hour. We will hang around though for a few minutes. So
we know the session is essentially completed, but we will always hang around for questions, so we're just going to mute ourselves. So thank you very much if you do disappear now. Okay, then seems that everybody's a bit shy this morning. No extra questions, so we're going to wrap up now. Thank you to anyone who's still on the call for attending. We really appreciate it. If you do have any further questions, please do let us know. We are always here to answer them, and thank you very much.